Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi, and welcome everybody. I think what I'll do is I'll take this off because I feel more comfortable just sort of talking and sharing with you as opposed to standing behind a podium, because it's not really my comfort zone standing behind the podium. But it's really great to see everybody here. It's great to see a full house, and this is what we had always envisioned when we started Partners in Torah, and Mendy Klein of blessed memory was my original partner in this. We went to Detroit. We learned what they were doing, and it was super exciting to see hundreds of people learning in Detroit, and we wanted to bring that to Cleveland, and we're so glad that we did. And Rabbi, thank you very much for giving me the honor of giving some remarks tonight. One of the things that I always like to talk about when I'm asked to speak to the folks from Partners in Torah is share a little bit about my journey and how I got to this point, because as most people know, particularly Jane Belkin knows this, I grew up in a Reform household at Fairmont Temple. My parents were very traditional, but we were Reform, and I had an aunt and uncle that were part of the religious community. My aunt my great aunt worked in the kitchen at Hebrew Academy, and some of my most fond memories were when my Aunt Sylvia, we'd go to their home for Pesach, and so it really imprinted upon me those great Jewish values. But when I was young, growing up in a Reform household, I really didn't have the education. I didn't have the background that I always desired. And it's interesting how going away to college at Michigan and then moving to Chicago, I was always interested in learning more. But it's a funny story. What really was the trigger to learning more about my faith. And it was when I moved to Chicago after graduating from Michigan. I didn't have a roommate, and so I went into a roommate pool. And you go to this this service, and they match you up with somebody. You find out how much you want to spend, what neighborhood you want to live in, and there's someone else on the other side that says, I have an extra room and I want to lease it. So this guy had this amazing loft. It was unbelievable on Sheffield, right by Fullerton, really close to the L. It was like right across the street from where DePaul University is. Amazing, amazing loft. And this guy had gone to Notre Dame, graduated and went to Notre Dame. And he was so knowledgeable about Catholicism. And he would always ask me, David, what's the Jewish opinion on this? David, what do the Jews think about this? And I couldn't answer him. And so I said, that was my wake-up call. That was when I said, I need to start to learn. And so I started to go to some learning sessions. And about that same year, I went to I was asked to be on the Young Leadership Cabinet. It's a federation sponsored organization. It's made up of young leaders from around the country. And I go to my very first cabinet retreat. And at that retreat, some of the scholars and residents were from an organization called Or Sameach. And I was so enamored. These guys were from Detroit, and they came and they had study sessions, and we learned. And there happened to be an Or Sameach rabbi in Cleveland. So when I returned, he called me up and he said, would you be willing to learn once a week with me? And so I said, of course. I wanted to stay on this journey. I left out the part. I had moved from Chicago back to Cleveland. So I moved to Cleveland. This Or Sameach rabbi reaches out to me. We learned once a week. We learned for 5 years. We started with Pirkei Avos. And we went, I can say my current chavrusa, I'll lead up to it, but we never finished Pirkei Avos because I picked it up with my current chavrusa. And we would learn week in, week out. And he came to me one day and he said, I am moving to Columbus with my wife for her job. And so we're going to have to stop studying. This was before Zoom, so we couldn't learn. Oh, I'm sorry on the camera. I hope you can still see me. I'm moving around. Is that okay? Good. So he said, we're not going to be able to learn anymore. And so that very same week, I get a phone call from a developer friend of mine who had been talking to Rabbi Zalman Gifter at Telshi Yeshiva about doing a development for faculty housing at Telshi Yeshiva. I'm a builder. That's what I do for a living. And this builder calls me up and he said, it's not for me, but I think this is something that you might be interested in. So I go to my very first meeting there and I learn about the project. And And there's a young rabbi there that's working with Rabbi Gifter. And so Rabbi Gifter asked me if I learned Torah. And I said, funny that you should ask. Just this very week, my chavrusa said, I'm moving to Columbus and I don't have a chavrusa. And he said, well, I've got a chavrusa for you. My chavrusa is David Greenwald. This is 23 years ago, 2000. And we've been learning once a week for 23 years. And it's been an amazing, amazing journey on how much I've learned as a result of having a chavrusa. And it's I don't need to tell the people in this room because you experience it yourself. But to be able to learn and to have that commitment once a week is something that's been very near and dear to my heart. He said to me tonight, we're like brothers. And it's true. I mean, to spend that amount of time together and learning Torah and finally finishing Pirkei Avos and going out of Mesilas Yesharim and, just going through the weekly Parsha week in and week out. It's been an absolutely transformational experience, particularly for someone that grew up in a Reform household. And so I feel a particular passion for all streams of the Jewish community. I raised my kids in a conservative synagogue, sent them to the Gross Schechter Day School. Two of them then went on to go to Agnon, the Mandel School. So I feel like I have the whole community covered, from Reform, conservative, Orthodox, and I feel comfortable in all aspects of that. And that's one of the things that gives me an incredible amount of pride when I was board chair of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, is how this community, how everybody gets along and how we work together and learn together. And it's such a special part of my life. One of the things that I wanted to share before I get to the Parsha let me get to the Parsha because it really plays into the story. So I'm going to break one of my rules. And one of my rules is that, and you can tell I just love to get up here and talk, but I'm going to actually read something to you because I couldn't do it justice on my own. So, this week's Parsha is Mishpatim, and it's where Moses is directed to collect gifts for the tabernacle. So let me just read this to you. The original menorah, which was made of a single 2,400-ounce piece of solid gold, stood 3 amos high, roughly 6 feet in height. It had 7 branches. Each one of the branches had 3 different kinds of decorations on it: cups, flowers, and knobs. They're interesting decorations, unique amongst all the different vessels of the tabernacle. And what's their significance? Well, according to Rabbi Dolinsky, the 3 types of decorations on the menorah refer to 3 different aspects or functions of the mind. The cups refer to the mind's ability to retain and hold information. In other words, to remember. The flowers represent the mind's ability to be creative, to imagine. And the knobs, which were just simple spheres, symbolize the ability of the mind to be self-obtained, to shut out the outside world. So the Maharal writes that of the three parts of a person, 2 can be constrained or controlled by outside forces and 1 cannot. A person's body and life force can be controlled externally, but a person's mind cannot, unless a person allows himself to be influenced. That's the significance of the knobs on the menorah. They were the graphic representation of a specific ability of the mind to be independent. Unless we give over the reins of our thoughts and opinions, we are ourselves totally in charge of them, and it's we who choose the way we act. And so, to me, that was very profound as being asked by Rabbi Landis to speak tonight, and to think about how we have the ability to control our minds. So I want to tell you about my 40th birthday present from a very good friend of mine. Now, this was just a guy that grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, went to University of Michigan. We had become friends through his wife because they had moved here after college, and his wife happened to work at the Federation here. She was the young leadership director of the Federation, and they had twin daughters, and we had a daughter the same age. And he came to me. They came to us for Shabbat, one Shabbat here in Cleveland, and our daughters were 2 years old. And he said to me, or they said to us, "We're moving to Florida." And so they said, let's make a promise to each other that our kids will go to summer camp together. And Becky and I were not summer camp people. So we said, sure, wherever you guys decide to send your kids to summer camp, not knowing that they were a huge Ramah family. So our kids ended up going to Ramah together, and we continue to foster this relationship and this friendship. Well, this guy, who you guys all know, who I'll tell you in a minute who it is, he gave me for my 40th birthday the complete Tanakh, the Rashi Tanakh, the Schottenstein. And so I said, when you get a gift like that, do you just put it on the shelf or do you learn it? And I said to myself, how am I going to learn this? Because to sit and read a parsha a week is an intense commitment to literally sit there and read and learn an entire parsha. I mean, so what I said was, I'm going to read a page a day, just one page every single day. And so in 1 year, I will finish the entire book of Genesis and then move on. And so I did that, and I learned one page a day, and I am still on that journey. I will let you know that was, I'm 57, so that was 17 years ago. I'm just completing right now Chronicles 2. So I have gone through all 5 books of Moses and the additional 19 books between, Judges, Kings, all the way through. And I'm on the very last one on Chronicles 2 right now. And I've just kept that up of a page a day. And so it's the creation of a habit. And there's a great book called The Power of Habit. But that gift was so transformational that when someone gives you a gift like that, this guy went on to do great things. He went on to be a congressman, a United States congressman, was probably the best advocate for the Jewish people in the Congress for the past, I think it was 14 years. But Ted Deutsch, who represented Boca Raton in Florida and is now the president of AJC, is the one who gave me that gift. And I will treasure that forever. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge that I really present to all of you. And so with that, I heard once that President George Bush, the younger, would read 100 books a year. And I said, wow, that's amazing. How can someone read 100 books a year? It was such an aspirational goal. And so I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to read 100 books a year. I'll give away my secret and let you know how I'm able to do that. But in 2016, I read 15 books. All right. In 2017, I read 55 books. In 2018, I read 107 books. And from 2019 to 2022, I've read 150 books a year, every year. And right now in 2023, sitting here on February 15th, I've read 24 books already this year. So one of the ways I do it is with Audible. It's a great way to do it really fast. And if you turn the dial up to 2.0, it sounds like chipmunks, but you can retain a lot. Believe me, it's just training your muscle to be able to do that. But it's allowed me to really have the discipline to learn a lot, to be able to expand my mind. I have an unbelievable mix of in those books, 150 a year. Some of them I read multiple times. So when I get to the month of Elul, I've got about 6 books that I read during the month of Elul, preparing me for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so what I share this with you because that total, I didn't even realize this. So I was sitting at home tonight preparing this. It's actually an even number. It's 800 books in the last 7 years. And so when you think about it, it's a massive number. It's a massive quantity. My kids make fun of me, but it's become an all-controlling part of my life. And it's been this unbelievable growth that I'll be able to do. And I share it with you as a challenge. And one of the books that I read every day is the Daf Yomi. So on March 12th, 2012, I started reading a half a daf a day. So if for those of you in the room that know this or are studying Daf Yomi, you know that you read a daf a day, and it's a 7.5-year program, and then it ends with the Siyum HaShas, and it's really exciting, and everyone around the country and everyone around the world is on the same program. I couldn't do that. I couldn't commit to a daf a day. So I decided I'll do a half a daf a day. And I did this with a friend of mine, a work colleague of mine in San Antonio, Texas. He was a descendant of the Shiloh HaKodesh, and he challenged me to do this learning of what we thought was going to be a daf a day, and we learned after about a week it was going to be a half a daf a day. And but I've been doing it ever since. I will complete it on March 11th, 2027. And So it's possible, it's doable, and it's amazing. If you come to my office, you can see all of the 2,711 pages, the 73 volumes, the 63 track dates. It's pretty amazing, and it's well worth it. So I had a challenge, and my challenge was, as those of you in the room know, we're here for Partners in Torah. The way that you learn Daf Yomi is you do it with Chavrusa. And so you sit and it's Chavrusa learning. And so I knew with my schedule and my travel that I wouldn't be able to do it with Chavrusa. So I went to my Chavrusa and I presented him with the dilemma. I said, what do? I want to do this. I want to learn. So what does he do? He goes to his rabbi and he asks, what's the ruling on this? And so the ruling that came down to me was that it's okay if you do it as long as you don't teach it, because I'm not learning it in a Chavrusa style. So as long as I'm reading it and learning it for my own benefit, that's okay. But I can't become a teacher of Talmud as a result of it. So I said, okay, so that I won't do. And maybe when I go through the next time, I'll have time at a different point in my life. But I wanted to do this, and I wanted to, and no looking back, it's been an incredibly important part of my life. And people will walk into my office. First of all, they think it's the Encyclopedia Britannica, because most of the people that walk into my office and they see all those books there. But really, they say, so what have you learned? Of course, I can't tell you what I've learned. But the one thing that I really have learned is how much I don't know. And even with 800 books, the humility of understanding how much there is to learn out there and how much there is for our minds to expand is what is really mind-boggling to me, is that this is a lifelong journey. I continue to challenge myself all the time. And that's what I really present to you and what I really wanted to come here and talk about. So the last thing I want to talk about, I'm big on creating habits. I really believe that we all have muscles, right? We go to the gym, we work out, we work on our muscles. Well, our mind is a muscle too. And so all of these things that I share with you are different ways that our mind and the muscle in our mind is working and growing at all times. And so we just have to make the commitment of what we want to attain in that growing. So one of the things that I did, and the year that I started was in 2001, was I wanted to take my observance of rituals of different things that I wanted to do to another level. So everyone knows that there are New Year's resolutions, and most of them revolve around exercise, diet, things of that nature. Well, I said in 2001 that I want to start on Rosh Hashanah taking my Judaism to another level. And so I wanted to learn the Shema. I said, I'm going to learn the three paragraphs of the Shema. I'm going to teach it to myself. I'm going to learn it. But when I'm going to learn it, I'm going to make the commitment that I'm going to do that every day for the rest of my life. And so I did. And then the next year I said, I'm going to learn the Amida. And I said, but whenever I take something on, and I'll sit with my rabbi, and David and I would sit and discuss this, it would be something that would be something that would be imprinted upon me, that I would have that muscle that I would do every day. How am I doing on time, Rabbi? Can I tell the tefillin story? So David gave me one of the most treasured gifts that I have. He's a righty, I'm a lefty. He gave me a gift of tefillin, and he had it switched over so that I could use it on put it on my right arm as a lefty. And he said, I've got one request of you with this gift. And my one request of you is that you keep it kosher. And I said, how do I keep it kosher? And he said, you have to put it on once a month and say the Shema. And so I took this responsibility so seriously and wanted to make sure that I was wrapping it the right way. And this was a new thing for me. Again, creating a muscle. Now I can put it on my sleep. But back then, I didn't even know how to wrap tefillin. So I would go to Telshia Yeshiva, and when we would learn once a week, once a month, I would go bring the tefillin, and I'd want to put it on in front of him, because I was so nervous about keeping the commitment that I had once a month of keeping this kosher that I wanted to do it with him there. I couldn't take the responsibility to do it myself. And so for the first year, I did it once a month. And then I said, you know what, if I can do it once a month, I can do it twice a month. And so the next year I said, I'm going to do this twice a month. And then the next year I said, if I can do it twice a month, I can do it 3 times a month. And by the time I got to the fourth year, I said, if I can do this 4 times a month, I can do this every day. And so since about 2005, I've been putting on tefillin 6 days a week. And it's, again, another thing that has changed my life. But it's really the creation of a habit and really working your mind and working that muscle in order to be able to do it and having that commitment. So just to read through a couple of things, 1 year I was adding the traveler's prayer to every time I hop on an airplane, which many of you in the room know is often. The saying Moda Ani, doing the Ashrei, doing Ashes Chayil for my wife every week, learning the Shabbat Amida, learning the Festival Amida. You get the idea here. So you end up 21 years later, and this guy that grew up in a Reform household that really didn't have an education and is educating himself is adding things to his life that are becoming, have become a daily part of my life. And so 21 years later, I wake up and there's a lot of things that I do, a lot of things I don't do. Many people in this room, grew up with a lot of these rituals and understanding it, or going to Jewish day school like my kids went. I didn't have any of that education, so I had to learn it all myself. And it's through Partners in Torah and the work that you guys are doing. And no matter which side of the table you're on, you're learning. One of the things David says to me all the time is how much he learns from me and how much he has an opportunity to learn for himself in preparing and studying and preparing the lessons each week, week in and week out, and how grateful he is to me. We always have arguments. No, I'm grateful to you. But in all seriousness, what the work that you're doing and the commitment that you're doing to Partners in Torah is incredible. Kol HaKavod. It's wonderful to see this room as filled as it is. And next year, may we go from this room to adding that room to maybe having to go to another building because there's so many people here. Rabbi, thank you for giving me the honor to speak tonight. Really appreciate it.